There's no echo on my side in the recording. Yo, Greg, how you doing today?
How are you doing, sir? I'm doing well.
I am doing fantastic. I'm really glad that I figured out that stupid echo from the first 3 episodes. I'm sorry about that, everybody. I did figure that out. It was a effects knob on my soundboard that was hiding from me, and it kind of looked like it was off, but it was just turned on slightly, and it gave me that slight echo. So hopefully that is all fixed. I did a bunch of tests, and I'm pretty certain and that we are good to go, and we will have beautiful audio. Some great feedback so far for the first 3 episodes. Haven't you seen that, Greg?
Yeah, it's been great. I really appreciate it. Had some awesome emails and some suggestions coming in. So we keep rocking and keep rolling, and we keep covering whatever people want to hear.
Exactly. Yeah. So in today's episode, everybody, we're going to be talking about Mac apps and kind of the Mac apps that me and Greg use to do our web design, and hopefully some good recommendations for you guys. So basically, the format is we're going to kind of go back and forth about apps that we think are great for users, in no particular order. So just because we talk about something first doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Just that's the order we randomly chose to go in for our picks of the day. Now, we only have about 30 minutes here, so I know there's going to be a lot of apps, right? Like, me and Greg were talking just before this that I opened my apps folder and it was like I had to go shopping for apps again. It was like, oh my God, look at all these apps that I have. It's like, didn't even know what half of them are anymore. I don't even use them. Are you
Joe,
the same
Joe,
way?
you have a problem, Joe. I'm, we'll just admit that there. I do have a collection from over time, but I got a new computer last year, so I made it a point not to install apps that I haven't used in a year.
Wow.
So
Okay, so
I've really
I
trimmed it
have
down.
an apps folder open right now, and I have 438 apps in there.
Exactly.
How many do you have?
Exactly. How many do I have? Oh, I'm looking at a different view. Hold on. Oh no. 117.
Oh man.
Yeah. You have four times. And that includes the system one. That includes the ones that are built in.
Yeah.
4 times the number of apps. Wow.
Yeah, I have a problem. I wonder if there's a group for that.
You could always start one. Weaver Space. Weaver
Yeah.
Space slash App Addicts.
Yeah, app addicts. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We'll have our own AA meeting.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to kick it off then, since your
Sure, I'll
collection's
kick it
this
off.
far?
Let's start with like a general purpose like image editing app. I think both of us probably have our favorites. Um I think the personal one that it's kind of always my go-to one is Pixelmator. It's just, for editing JPEGs and doing stuff like that. Um, I know there's a lot of other ones out there. There's like Affinity Photo and Acorn and obviously Photoshop, but I always go back to Pixelmator myself because it's just something that I know, right? And I feel comfortable in it. All the rage everyone's talking about Affinity Photo and how wonderful it is and how it's gonna, take down Photoshop. But I don't know, I find the interface just pretty complex. And maybe if I took the time to learn it and understand everything, but Pixelmator just feels at home for me, right? And so, I think it's a great app. What's your favorite image editing app, Greg?
My vote's Acorn.
Mm.
I just same kind of thing. It's like the UI. I really like the UI. There's this very subtle snapping feature when you go
Hmm.
to crop stuff that it gets the pixels just right. So when I drag it around, it kind of just snaps to that boundary where there's like a stark
Yeah.
contrast in color or something. So it makes it really fast and really easy for me to like crop images and do some basic editing that I need. I'm not a graphic designer by any
Yeah.
means, but works perfectly for the things I use.
Yeah. I actually own Acorn and it was my go-to for a long time. And I loved it back in the day when it was like a single window app. And then they
Mhm.
kind of went to like where all the other apps go, where you have like toolbar windows all over the place.
Yep.
And at that point, I started, looking at Pixelmator. So I kind of went that way. But I still use Acorn for a certain thing. If I ever need to do anything fancy with text, like I want to do some effects and stuff on text, Acorn is hands down so much better than Pixelmator at that. I feel so. If I ever need to do anything fancy with text and an image, I still open up Acorn and use that.
Cool. Cool. So I guess I'm up.
Yeah, go for
I'm
it.
gonna have to, I'm gonna have to go. Everybody should have a good backup. So I'm gonna start with Arc, ARQ.
Mhm.
It's an awesome backup app. Does incremental backups. So, you know, work with confidence that your system is protected. Um, can't stress that enough. So I know it's not web design related, but if we're gonna be doing our work, doing our living on these things, then we should definitely take it seriously.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, for backups, I still use Time Machine. That's all I really use. Now that only does obviously local backups, right? But
Yep.
um, I used to use Crash Plan, and they kind of changed up a whole bunch of stuff, so I stopped using them. And actually purchased Art like a year ago, but I've never really configured it to back up to anything yet. And I noticed that they recently, I think it was recent, they support now Backblaze, which
Yep.
is like dirt cheap, like really really cheap. So I actually got my dad set up some offsite backups with Backblaze just last week. So it kind of got my head turning of how easy that actually is to do. So I'm probably gonna start using Arc, even though I've owned it for like a year or two. So
Yeah. Um, Funny side comment: the developer of Arc is actually local to me. Met him.
oh
Great
really?
guy. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Really great guy. So just kind of bestows that confidence in
Hmm.
something that is so important to a user.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So my next
You're up.
pick, I'm going to stick in the image editing world because I think image editing is really really vital to web design. So, but I'm going to change it up and go to something which is more vector based graphics. So we talked about apps like Pixelmator and Acorn and Affinity Photo, and those are great for like bitmap related images, right? That are all pixel based. But there are other apps that let you create things like SVGs are the like kind of the cool thing out there. All the kids are using SVGs, which is a scalable vector graphic. Okay, and what a vector graphic is, it allows you to scale the image infinitely, and the image will always look crystal sharp. Right. So my kind of go-to app right now is Sketch. It's really really nice. But I just tweeted today that I really want to start using OmniGraffle a lot more, and I know that it does SVGs and vector graphics also. So I think I'm going to give OmniGraffle a shot for a little while and kind of put Sketch off to the side. Other options, just to let people know, there is Affinity Designer, which kind of like Affinity Photo is all the rage. Everyone's saying it's going to beat Adobe Illustrator, but I just like these simpler ones like Sketch and OmniGraffle. They're just they're more intuitive to me, and I like the way the apps are laid out, and they're just more user friendly, in my opinion.
Cool. Cool. I guess my next pick would be Xscope from the Icon Factory. It's a great app for really zooming in, and it has actually a bunch of utilities. The main one I use is to zoom in to the pixel perfect point on a screen, so I can see, I can examine the drop shadow on a corner. I can pick a particular color in some palette that I'm trying to match or and
Mhm.
tweak and tune. There's also a rulers feature, so you can measure the distance between elements and stuff like that. It's really great, really handy, awesome app.
Don't they also have like an iOS like version so you can like mirror stuff onto the iPhone? I really don't. I own Xscope, but I don't use it really much. I use it for the ruler function somewhat sometimes, but that's it.
You know, to be honest, I yes, actually they have a mirror feature. I just opened it, so
Ah,
I'm thinking that's what you're probably referring
yeah,
to.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, but I really use the loop
Mm,
and those kind of tools more
yeah.
more than anything.
Okay, fair enough.
Um, yeah.
Well, yeah,
So
I have used it for the ruler feature, or where you can like put the little red lines on the screen. You
yep.
know,
Yeah.
I like that kind of like the guides. So it's like static guides on your screen. It is a cool app. Good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
My next one. So you talked about like picking colors with Xscope. I'm going to go with my go-to color picker. There's a lot of great color pickers out there, but I use one called SIP, SIP, and I just really like it. It's they you can download it for free, but I think it's like $10 for the pro version, and I think it's totally worth it. What I like about it is that it just sits up in your menu bar, and whenever you copy a color code off of anything, it kind of watches your clipboard and it'll save that color value so you can easily reference it later. And then you can also create your own little color palettes. So, like, what I do is for every project, I'll have a color palette. So, like my email stacks website, I have specific colors that I want to use in that project. And so I'll create a color palette inside SIP that contains all the colors for that particular project. So I can quickly, reference those and, click on the, variation of purple or pink or whatever that I want for that particular project. It's really, really cool.
Does it let you adjust so you can like tune and match and or do compliments or
So
anything
it
like
doesn't
that?
have any sort of complimentary thing. I would love that. If it did have that, that would be like the ultimate feature. I still for like complementary colors, I still own Color Schemer Studio, which is like I don't even think it's available anymore. I've owned it for years, but it still works. So that's kind of I still open up that app to get any sort of complementary colors. But you can add new and you can tweak some colors. But again, the complementary color thing would be really awesome if SIP added that.
That's cool.
Another feature I love with SIP is you can when you create a color palette inside SIP, you can export that to the Apple color picker so that when you're in the default color picker in Rapid Weaver or whatever app, you can just on the little drop down where if you're in, I think it's the second tab in the color utility, there's like a select box, and then your color palette from SIP would show up inside there. So that's really really useful. So that you don't need
That's
to always
interesting.
go back to SIP. It'll export to the default color palette, and then you'll have all your colors there. Super useful.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So my other hidden app that I use a lot is an app called Smaller. My typical workflow when publishing is I actually export my project and I run it through two apps. The first one is Image Optimum, and that optimizes all of the images of my project, and that includes all of the developers' images. So, say you had a stack that didn't have an image that wasn't optimized, it would cover all those as well, and my images, right? So it's a great to cover the whole website. But then I also run my entire project through an app called Smaller, which will compress the HTML, the CSS, or the JavaScript files.
Hmm.
So make my output of my project even smaller. Um, there is a huge caveat to this that you have to really configure the preferences of Smaller to be RapidWeaver compatible,
Yeah.
because by default it will rename files. So it'll take your CSS file and rename it to .min.css, which will absolutely break your entire website when you export it.
Yes.
So, go if someone who uses this, go into the preferences, make sure the output of the file name is the same as the source. Um,
Cool. So you
yeah.
export your site locally, and then you
Yes,
just take that folder, drag it onto smaller, and boom, it's done, right?
exactly,
Cool.
exactly.
As long as
And
you have
I
everything configured properly.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Cool.
Um, yeah, I love it. It's great.
Sweet.
So
I
I kind of took two there. So
That's fine.
feel
That's
free.
fine.
Yeah.
So for image optimization, I do think that is a key one because a lot of people what they do is um, they'll upload really large images, and that is just a killer for your website. Like probably I think the number one performance hit on a website is large images. Do
Yeah,
you agree?
absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And I could even go in further on that if you let me keep going with it. It's like people ask me and they say, oh, my hosting is slow, sluggish, and you fire up the web console and you see 10 megabyte image loading on their homepage,
Mhm.
full resolution. Um, and really what they should be doing is using a JPEG image, 80 to 90% efficiency, right? 80, 90% optimization or quality. Sorry, that's the setting.
Yep.
And running it through these apps called like Image Optimum, and their images should be 150, 200K
Mhm.
easy, and I still see people throwing, multi-megabyte images on their website, you know. Um, but what I also see is people are now putting videos, multi-megabyte videos on their website,
Yep.
and I've seen people, no lie, put a 70 megabyte video on their homepage.
Yeah. And
Just
they wonder why their page is loading slow. Yeah. Yep.
they wonder a lot of things. They wonder a lot of things. Um, so on that, I highly recommend people you check out Handbrake. Handbrake is an awesome open source project.
Yep.
It has a ton of presets to take your web videos and export them into all the web safe file sizes
Yeah.
for
Handbrake's a great
all
one.
the,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll go related. Let's say, so image compression I think is really, really important. We kind of said that for a few minutes now. My three, I'm going to give you three that I use for image compression. Image Optim is what Greg recommended. I use that mostly for PNGs, and then there's also JPEG Mini, which is a little pricey. I think it's like $20, but I think it is the best thing out there to compress a JPEG. Like it is really top notch. So yeah, JPEG Mini's awesome. And just a tip, a tip to the hat to our real Mac Dan and Ben. They got Squash, and they've really updated that a lot. And I've kind of started using that to replace both Image Optim and JPEG Mini because it does a pretty decent job. The more you use the three apps, you kind of realize what types of images each app kind of compresses better. And I kind of just by looking at an image go, oh, I think Squash is going to be best on that one or JPEG Mini. But most of the time, I do find that Squash does a really great job. It actually has a preference. If you I forget what it's called, but it's like it'll do like it'll take extra long to compress it, but it does a slightly better job. And so that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So Squash. Another one for video compression for me is Handbrake is awesome. For I think for a really beginner user, it could be a little daunting.
Yeah, I can see
There,
that.
yeah, there is a pretty inexpensive app on the App Store called Video Compress Pro, and it's dirt simple. It just has a couple sliders. You drag and drop your video in there, and you say what kind of quality you want, and you say export, and it does a pretty decent job. I'm pretty impressed with it. I think it was like $1.99 on the App Store or something like that. So yeah, Video Compress Pro, that was a good one.
Mm, that's cool. That's a nice tip. Yeah, my export publishing workflow is so ingrained at this point that it's hard to see switching
Yeah.
to JPEG Mini or Squash, but
Hmm.
it's going to be exciting to see what comes out from these projects.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want to pick another one? Since I just steamrolled through three.
Sure. Um, I've been talking a lot about image apps, but I think again they're very important. So my next one is an app called Pixave, Pixave, and I use it for all of my stock photos and icons and stuff like that. It's kind of like iPhoto or Photos app for non-family photos, right? It's so for all my web design photo, image and stock photos and stuff like that. I throw all that into an app called Pixave. They have an iPad app as well, or an iOS app. I don't really use that because my library is so big. It's like 15 gigabytes, I think. There's no way I want to sync that up to the cloud. So it is just on my Mac Pro here, but that is a great app. It's very performant. Um, I started using it when Real Mac discontinued Ember. Ember was really great. I did love Ember, and I know Real Mac is hinting of that potentially coming back. But Pixav is a great app. The developer is very attentive, and he releases quite a bit of an updates. So Pixav's a great pick there.
Oh, from Shiny Frog.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, cool. I didn't realize that app was still around. It's been a while. That is
yeah,
a good app. Good, yeah, good call.
yeah.
So if we're gonna talk about some organization and stuff like that, my next app would be Icon Jar. It's an unbelievable app for all sorts of icons, and you'll find that if you do a lot of icons on your website, a lot of new icon packs now distribute an icon jar format, so you don't have to. My workflow used to be manually sorting them into folders and categorizing them, and now they're completely searchable. I can do all sorts of stuff, and it's a really awesome app.
I agree. Icon Jar is really great. I did try to use it to replace Pixav, and I didn't really think it really was great for that. It is awesome for
No,
like the linear icons, especially since you can like
yes,
change the color and preview the color changes in Icon Jar. Good job. I've
yeah,
totally forgot about Icon Jar. It's awesome. So I actually do use both. I do have Icon Jar for like my font awesome style icons, right? For like those
right, right,
singular
yeah,
color ones, and then everything
yep,
else I use for Pixav. So yeah, good
yep,
call on Icon Jar. It's a good one.
yeah. I'm really excited that designers have picked up on it and start tagging all their images and supporting this format because it makes finding and tweaking and sorting all the stuff that you purchase and collect over the internet so much so much nicer to work,
Oh
more
yeah.
efficient.
Yep.
All right, you're up.
I'm up. Okay, so I'm gonna jump into kind of semi developer land. There is a lot of you RapidWeaver users. It would be great if you knew a little bit more HTML or a little bit more CSS, and if you want to dabble in JavaScript or things of that nature. There's an amazing app called Dash, and what Dash is, it allows you to easily search um, HTML and CSS docs and whatnot. And if you're an Alfred user like I am, Alfred.app is a great like app launcher. There is a killer integration between Dash and Alfred where I launch Alfred, type CSS space and like border, and all of a sudden it'll list out all the CSS attributes that say border. I select the one I want, and then all of a sudden the documentation with examples for that particular CSS attribute are displayed. It's just killer. I use it 100 times a day and it supports more than just HTML and JavaScript. I mean, it has tons of different every programming language you could think of. But I think it is an amazing app. Just to if you want to learn a little bit more CSS, just to kind of browse through it. Yes, they're all available online, but if it's an app, I feel that maybe someone would use it a little bit more than going straight to Mozilla or going straight to W3 schools or whatever. So I think Dash is great.
No, that's a good call, and it's not just about that. You can actually go to Google and go to those other websites. You filter out all the junk sites that don't really have
Yeah.
either accurate updated documentation and all the ads. So you're getting a nice clean interface to actually focus and read what's important.
Yep.
Um, but if you do go on the web, I highly recommend the Mozilla documents as like the de facto
Yeah, that's what
standard on the
Dash
web.
uses is the Mozilla Documents. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Perfect. Yeah, I use Dash as well. It's a good one. Oh, so if we're going to talk developer stuff, then I'm going to talk about a free app called SQL Pro. So a lot of users want to dive in and connect to their database. They want to view a database. They want to use it in a web-friendly manner. Um, so a lot of hosts support PHP MyAdmin, but if you want to connect to it on a Mac, you can use an app like SQL Pro. And how I recommend people use it, and how I tell people at Chili Dog to use it is to set up an SSH tunnel. So basically, you connect securely to your host, like Chili Dog, and use a protocol called SSH, which allows you to safely and securely share and connect your information. You do not want to connect to your database in a different manner because doing so is highly insecure and very much will lead you to getting your site hacked. So basically, use SQL Pro. It has native support for SSH tunnels, um, and then you can connect right to your database, and you can view it right in your desktop. You can run queries. You can see all your data. It's it's really great. It's really easy. I use it a lot in development. Yeah,
Yep. I use SQL Pro as well. It's amazing that it's such a powerful app and it's free.
I know
There's
it's
a
a
lot of
crazy.
non-free ones out there, and SQL Pro beats them all. I think SQL Pro is just a killer app.
I agree. I agree. There's like Navicat that's like
Yeah.
hundreds of dollars, and
Exactly.
SQL Pro is open source and free.
Yep. Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, next I'm gonna stick on the developer track a little bit. If you want to get down and dirty and maybe develop some code, um, I've I have two app suggestions for you. The first one is Code Runner, really really cool app, and I use it a lot just to do quick and dirty PHP and to test some stuff out. So I will type in some PHP, and then there's a run button, you can run it, and then it'll output the outputs of that PHP on the bottom of the screen. So it's like a two pane. So you have the where you code at the top, and then the output of whatever your script is at the bottom. So I use that all the time to kind of test small snippets of PHP, Ruby, shell scripts. I mean, you name it. It does a ton of different languages. I wish it did JavaScript. It doesn't do that. That would be pretty slick. But Code Runners, just thumbs up on that one. It is a great app. And if you want to go a little bit further, VS Code, I've kind of moved over to Visual Studio Code, to my all day long coding efforts. So I develop everything that I do in Visual Studio Code, which kind of makes me feel a little bit dirty because I'm using a Microsoft product, but they've really done a great job with VS Code. It is a superb app. They borrowed a lot from Sublime Text, which a lot of developers used for years. It was kind of like the de facto hipster web developer tool, and kind of everyone's moving over to VS Code, and it's nicer. It's really really nice. So, Code Runner and VS Code. Those are my picks for developing.
Code Runner is awesome because I will write a short function and I'll test it
Hmm.
and I'll know instantly if I'm on the right track or not. Highly recommend that if you do any kind of PHP, especially.
Yeah,
It's
super
pretty awesome.
helpful for PHP.
I have to respectfully disagree with you on Visual Studio Code
Ah, fair
and
enough. Fair
Sublime.
enough.
I'm a big fan of BB Edit.
Oh,
I I love BB Edit. Every I've been trying to add them, and I just whenever I try to throw a big file at BB Edit, it just handles it, and no questions, no performance issues. Everything I throw at BB Edit is like butter. Atom and some of those other editors just crawl to the knees. They just keel over. Um, yes, and every user needs a good text editor. And what I find is that a lot of people who just use text edit
mm,
um, highly discourage that because
yes.
of character encoding, and it it'll insert characters and break things on your page. So prior to BB Edit was the paid version of their software, and they had another app called Text Wrangler. They discontinued Text Wrangler in favor of a BB Edit free version and a BB Edit paid version. So I highly recommend, you could just use BB Edit free version for most users, and you can edit all sorts of HTML, text files, CSS files, et cetera, using this. Use that tool. It has a built-in SFTP client as well, so you can edit files directly on the server too. So
Sweet.
BB Edit, yeah.
Talking about SFTP, I'm going to go ahead and say Transmit is my de facto FTP client. It is just, it's probably the most expensive one out there. I know there's a lot of debate, people using stuff like Forklift and Yummy FTP and a bunch of other, inexpensive FTP apps. And Transmit is just solid. And I think you get what you pay for. A perfect example. Just last week, actually, I had a customer that was um, it was a German customer, so a lot of the file names had umlauts in it, right? So he would, and he what he did is he downloaded some CMS data from Total CMS from one server, and he uploaded it to another server. Okay, using, I believe it was Yummy FTP, and I'm going, and the data, it wasn't working on the new server, and I'm going and racking my brain of what the heck's going on here. And what happened is Yummy FTP had inserted some invisible characters with the umlauts with the because it's a Unicode character. And I asked the guy, can you please download Transmit and try that? And it worked flawlessly. So stuff like that, it would have saved him days of work, and frustration if, he just used Transmit. So, everyone, I'm not saying that, that sort of scenario is going to happen to everybody, but I'm a strong proponent of you get what you pay for, and Transmit is the best FTP app out there, and I think you should get it.
I don't have much more to add than yes. I do have Forklift. I actually test and download a lot of FTP apps. You'd be amazed. Because I have to make sure they all work, and with Chili Dog and stuff like that. So I need to just be able to see what people are doing and try to replicate their experiences with with these software applications. And Transmit is just bar none the best FTP app out there. And aside from that, if you had to go in a different direction, Forklift would probably be my number two.
Hmm.
So
I could go with that. I
yeah,
have had good success with Forklift. I did use it for a little while. I haven't used it for a long time since I love Transmit so much.
yeah. Another one that I was trying that I really kind of like, but they've kind of seemed like they burned me is one called Interarchy. Interarchy. They're supposed to ship an update, a big update, but they've seemed to become always in beta,
Mm,
never a release. Yeah.
yeah.
What
Okay,
is?
I think let's see my last big topic I think that kind of covers web design is like previewing locally, right? Um so
Sure.
a lot of I should say RapidWeaver 7 it has a built-in kind of PHP server built into the app, and that is really good. It has been a godsend for me just developing and making and, knowing that there's a web server behind the actual preview engine in RapidWeaver. So actually this has been less important to me now that RapidWeaver 7 kind of has it baked in, but um I think it is very useful to have, some sort of web server local on your machine that you can use to preview stuff. So you can export locally to a folder and then set that as your document root and then preview in the browser. It is very powerful, very useful to have. And there are right now primarily two ways that you could do it. There might be more. First, Apple has OS 10 server, um, which I use. And then there's MAMP, which is very widely popular. It is free. Now, the reason I don't use MAMP, I used to be a big MAMP user, is I purchased Pro years ago, MAMP Pro. Um, Purely, I didn't really need the features. I just wanted to support MAMP because I thought it was a great project, right? And I discovered something interesting about Pro that what I did is on my Mac Pro, I'd have MAMP running all the time because it was just something that I'd always have running so that I could preview my sites locally. And then I found when I was on my laptop, let's say sitting on the sofa, I couldn't launch MAMP. It wouldn't let me launch it at all. And the reason is MAMP, they don't allow you to have multiple Pro instances running on the same network unless you buy a second license. Um, I asked them, I'm like, hey, I don't really, this just, I was just trying to support you. And they, stuck to their guns and they didn't want to allow me to have, two instances on the same network. So I said, fine. And I moved to Apple server and I've been pretty happy with it. But with that said, I think Apple server, they've been removing a lot of features from it. It still has a web server built in, but I'm wondering how long that is going to last. It is pretty cheap. It's like $20, but like I said, Apple's been removing features like mad from that server app over the past couple of years. So I'm not sure how long it's going to survive, but it is good.
Yeah, I used to use Map myself. I'm surprised to hear your story. I'm wondering if you could have blocked it using like Little Snitch or something like that.
Mm, could have been.
Yeah. I actually migrated off of Map myself. I actually moved into something a lot more developer focused. So probably beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but I moved into a tool called Vagrant for
Ah, yeah,
all
that's
my
that.
stuff.
Yeah, that's yeah. I'm aware. I'm aware of Vagrant, and I've played around with it. It was too much work. I wanted something simpler.
Yeah, but once you get it set up, it's I just run a command and I have
Yeah,
3 instances of PHP running and
yeah, yeah.
so
That's pretty getting pretty geeky there.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
I agree. So
What's your next pick?
I think I have two more.
Okay.
One for collaboration with peers and clients is an app called Napkin.
Mm.
So I take a screenshot, make a few quick edits, blow up a little eye loop on an image, jot some notes, send it back. Just a quick and easy way to, I think a lot of people use what was that little image editing app that used to be free for a while just to mark up stuff?
Annotate.
Hmm, I can't remember, but napkins my pick for stuff like that.
Yeah.
It lets me kind of communicate a little bit better with people.
Cool.
Um, and then my last little utility I have to give a shout out to is an app called Magnet. It I work on multiple displays a lot. So I work on my laptop. I work on my 21-inch display. So Magnet lets me move windows around and organize my work so I could have code on my left, I can have a preview on my right, or I can rearrange the contents of whatever I'm working with pretty quickly,
Hmm.
pretty easily, and keep it kind of separated. So switching between desktops and different displays is especially useful.
Cool.
Do you have an
Yeah,
app like that?
I use a similar app called Moom, Moom. I do
Hmm.
own
Okay.
Magnet. I've just used Moom for years, and it just clicks with me. So I tested Magnet, and I didn't really feel like learning a whole new workflow. So
Yeah.
I stuck with Moom. But yeah, very similar, workflow.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah,
So you got any
sweet.
more picks?
I I have a couple more. I think there's smaller ones that I use less frequently. So I'm not gonna talk a ton about them, but I think
Well,
that they're
you have
useful.
300 more than I do.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
odds
yeah.
are you have a few more.
So Art Text is a cool app. It's kind of image based. It allows you to like create like really fancy, text. That's very stylized. It's not made for reading. It's purely, to make art out of text. It's cool. I don't think I've ever actually used it on a website, but I've played around with the app. I think it's cool. I know a lot of people that do use it on websites though. Next one is Font Explorer. If you're going to be managing your own font files, so like purchasing fonts and whatnot, Font Explorer is a pretty expensive one, but it is like the de facto kind of standard for managing your own font libraries. So Font Explorer is a good one.
What about font base?
I own FontBase. Font Explorer does a lot more than FontBase does.
Okay.
It's yeah. It in terms of like previewing fonts and like you can type out the text and like select multiple fonts and you can kind of compare them and it Font Explorer is a really nice app. Um, so yeah. I do own FontBase as well, but I think Font Explorer, I've tried 3 or 4 and Font Explorer for me is if you're really going to get serious about fonts, you should look at Font Explorer. It's a good one.
Cool.
Next one is a small app called Patterno. I think that's how you pattern and then O at the end. So and it's just for creating an app for creating like repeatable backgrounds. I don't use it very often, but it is useful. It's a nice little app. So if it's if you're looking for, for some tiled backgrounds, Patterno is pretty nice. Another one, PhotoBulk. I know a lot of RepReaver users use PhotoBulk, and it's kind of like an image automation thing where, like, if you want to batch resize a ton of images, PhotoBulk will do that for you. We talked about image optimizers in terms of compressing the images and making them smaller, but PhotoBulk will do is it'll actually resize the images as well. So
Hmm.
that is a nice one. But I don't think PhotoBulk actually does the compression like Squash and JPEG Mini and Image Optim and the other apps we were talking about. So, but
Yeah.
PhotoBulk is good for bulk resizing of images, and I think it does some renaming and other stuff.
And that's funny. I'm used to using Automator for that.
Ah, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see. My last app.
Just
There's
all
an app called Feeder, and Feeder is a cool app if you want to like create your own RSS feeds or podcast feeds, um, and you don't want to like use some sort of service that manages those for you. It is a nice app for manually creating an RSS feed. It's not something I really have to do very often. Even for this podcast, we're hosting it on Transistor, but if you need to create an RSS feed, Feeder is a great way to do that.
yeah, Feeder is awesome. I used
Yeah.
to use that all the time, but I've had to try to automate my workflow more, and I wasn't able to do that within Feeder, so I had to kind of abandon it, unfortunately. But that
Mm,
is a good pick.
yeah. And my last one for creating collages of images, There's an app called Turbo Collage. It doesn't look like it's a fabulous app. Like if you look at the screenshots or whatever, it kind of looks old school, but like its algorithm for auto, like, generating collages of images is pretty spectacular. Um, so John Hawkins, Hipster Weaver, he's the one who's kind of sold me on it, and like he uses it all the time just to like, um, he'll use it like temporary to just like, he has 10 images, he wants to create like some sort of random layout, and like, and then he'll try to replicate that in Rapid Weaver, or he'll use the actual collage itself, the image that it generates. But I think collage, Turbo Collage is, if you're looking for creating collages, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Huh, sweet. Well, that's all I have for today,
Yeah,
Joe.
I think that was it.
That was a lot of apps.
That was a lot of apps, man. I think we went a little bit over, but I think that was good. Oh, I guess
Yeah.
one thing we should talk about is an app that everybody already has. It's Safari or Chrome or whatever, the developer tools inside there.
Oh
Very powerful
yes.
stuff. We could probably go on for multiple sessions just about that alone. But that is, I think, a number one pick, in terms of all Rapid Weaver users should learn how to use the web inspector. Whether or not it's
Ab-
Safari, Chrome, Firefox, doesn't matter. Learn it.
Absolutely. And if anybody hasn't checked out Firefox in a long time, do it because the new Firefox has gotten really nice, really fast. I read a lot about how they rewrote a lot of their core CSS engine in a different language and it's had huge improvements. So yes, I'm really into it. Good
Sweet.
call.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that wraps up it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's session. If you enjoyed this podcast, we are now everywhere. We are on iTunes, on Google Play. So go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. And if you hated this show, please don't leave a review at all. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
So 5-star reviews. And if you have any feedback, what's our email, Greg?
What I don't remember what we
Oh
decided
man,
on.
I
It was
I, I think it was I think it was feedback at weaverradio.com, right?
that sounds about right.
Yeah,
And
I'm pretty sure
confirm.
that also there is a space on Weaver Space. So Weaver Space community.weavers.space/Weaver Radio, or Weaver Dash Radio. And go ahead and leave us comments or questions there. So either email us or post it on Weaver Space. And thank you very much, Greg.
Yes, thank you, sir. Good to talk to you.
Sweet. Take care,
Until
everybody. We'll
next
see you in
time.
the next episode. Bye.
Later, guys. Bye.